Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore Positive. We are positively down here in the heart, in the mecca of downtown Baltimore as I stare at Parks Fried Chicken out here. We're at Lexington Market, beautiful Lexington Market, historic Lexington Market. We are at Fadley's in Lexington Market. This is Luke Jones. I'm Nestor. It's all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. I have the Back to the Future scratch-offs. The Maryland Lottery, Liberty Pure, Curio Wellness, all sending us out on the road to do this thing called the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. I would show you the crab cake, but we already ate them.
It was delicious.
It's always
delicious. As always.
As always. Luke is here because the Orioles are entertaining the Angels here this weekend. We're going to talk a little Oriole baseball here going into the weekend and out of the week and out of Jared Scoop. Here we go again, dude. In the good days, win 2 out of 3. Win series. Split
Right.
4-game series. Win series. Just don't lose series. Don't ever lose a series and stay ahead a little bit. That's how you get ahead on 15, 20 games over 500 or 30 games over 500.
Sure.
They lost another series, and you can feel good about scoring a bunch of runs in the 8th and 9th inning, in the middle game, and turning a game into a blowout that could have been a blowout earlier. It's just such a weirdly flawed team. I mean,
Yeah.
And when left-handed pitchers pitch, we're into the middle of June now. I don't know that I've ever seen anything like this. And I wouldn't say from a good team because they're not a good team. They're a bad team. So one of the things that makes you a bad team is having these trends of none of them are good right now. They don't have a lot of good trending going on.
No, and obviously people were optimistic about winning 9 of 11. And look, they're playing better baseball overall over the last 3.5 weeks. But at the same time, most teams in baseball are going to have a stretch where they win 9 of 11 or something like that, right? I mean, unless you're talking about the Rockies, right? So, yeah, they're playing better, but is it anything that's moving the needle? Is it anything that's allowing them to climb out of this colossal hole that they dug themselves by the middle of May? And to me, the answer is very clearly no. They won 9 of 11. They lost in Sacramento. I told you as we were recapping that series that really felt bad, knowing Detroit was coming in, knowing that the A's had been so terrible, and you dropped 2 out of 3. If you're 15 games over 500, you can live with losing a series here and there, right? I mean, it happens to everyone, but they don't have any of that. So they lose to the A's. They come home. Tuesday night was the game that looked the most winnable on paper. They lost that game. They won on Wednesday night, to your point. I mean, they scored 10 runs for the first time. I mean, their highest run output since opening day.
It was a 3-1 game, right? I mean,
yeah.
and it was a game where they could have blown the game.
Oh, yeah.
They could have won the game twice.
What, they were 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position through the first 5 or 6 innings, I think.
Which is not that's not a trend. That's a habit.
Oh, I mean, that's been part of their story. Yeah. Part of their story. And then the other part of their story as far as it pertains to the offense, of course, we know the pitching, but they have been a disaster against left-handed pitching. And, it started the second half of last year, but not to this degree, right? I mean, it wasn't this extreme. You look at them, I mean, they have the worst OPS in the majors against left-handed pitching. I think they are 29th in batting average. Only the Rockies are worse against left-handed pitching. And you're going up against Tarek Skubal. I mean, it's not as though he struck out 15 and totally humiliated them, as I pointed out and as others were pointing out. Guy's given up 1 run in his last 30 and 2/3 innings, I think it is. He does this against everyone, but 7 innings, 6 strikeouts, 3 hits. They had a couple opportunities very early in the game to put a run or 2 on the board. And then Dean Kramer, who was the bulk guy. They used Aiken as an opener.
Just a garden variety quality start.
I mean, he went 7 innings, but the 4th inning, killed him. You give up 2 home runs. You groove a couple balls. A couple times he was ahead in the count.
Well, when you're going up against Skubal, there's no margin for error in that way.
I mean, you can't do that. I mean, there's no shame in losing to Tarek Skubal. But it's just a snapshot of the bigger picture that they have just been an utter disaster. The problem is they make every left-hander look like Tarek Skubal. That's truly the problem. I mean, I referenced Jacob Calvin-Meyer of the Sun. He had a tweet recently putting out what Randy Johnson, what the splits slash line was against him his Cy Young year. And that's the Orioles slash line against everyone this year, or all left-handers this year. So it just speaks to how wild it's been. Craziest thing to me, and I'll use this as an example, and to his credit, Gunnar Henderson all 3 games of this series against Detroit, he had a hit against a left-hander. Have you seen what his numbers are against lefties, though? It's extraordinarily bad. He's having career-high numbers against right-handed pitchers this year. But he has, I think I had it written down. I don't have it right in front of me.
Well, he didn't play the first 2 weeks, right?
But going into, well, it was only the first week, though.
Okay.
I mean, he missed a week. But going into Thursday night, he had a 422 OPS against left-handed pitching. I mean, it's like a pitcher. Like, that's as bad as Chris Davis was when he cratered at the end of his career. But Gunner's been great against right-handers. Now, again, it's good. He's had a hit against the lefty in 3 straight games going into this weekend series, so maybe he's starting to turn the corner in that way. But that's Gunnar Henderson.
We are measuring small here.
That's Gunnar
Henderson. When your
Henderson.
best players had a hit every couple days, and you're mentioning it as.
But that's what I'm saying. But that's where it's been.
If we were doing good news on the Orioles this year, it was really Baltimore positive. I don't even know where we begin.
Literally, he has 14 hits against left-handers this year. He's been phenomenal against right-handed pitching. He's been a disaster against left-handed pitching. And look, Gunner's aware of it. I'm not trying to pick on him specifically. They're all struggling against lefties. I mean, it's why they're collectively so bad.
8 weeks ago, we're trying to figure out if Jackson Holliday's a major leaguer, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
he's held his own against lefties about as well as you could expect a 21-year-old left-handed batter. I mean, he's got like a 624
interesting
OPS
year
against
for him
lefties.
all the way around as we get to the middle of it, just on where the growth for the organization and for him is, because he's also the 1-1, right? He's also the guy that, if the catcher doesn't make it, and Henderson's just going to be a really good all-star player.
But not an MVP,
but not a
right.
superstar, not a true superstar, a $300 million player.
Yeah.
This time last year, we're talking about they're on fire. They're the
Sure.
greatest. Where's Mr. Moneybags going to get all the money to pay all of these guys?
Now's the time you could try to sign some of these guys on the cheap. I mean, the question is, who do you want to extend? I mean, I have no interest in extending Adley Rutschman right now. Like,
zero.
I wouldn't. That's not to say that wouldn't change a year from now, maybe. But until he had
when
the
you say
good road
extending,
trip,
at what price?
I mean, that's the thing. And that's always the question. And let me be clear. There is another team in baseball almost as disappointing as the Orioles, the Atlanta Braves. They were the team that extended so many of their young players. And I don't want to say it's buyer's remorse with all of them, because that would be 2 steps too far.
Well, it's remorse to let Freddie Freeman walk out the door, too.
There is. But the point is, now you look at some of those long-term deals they did, and I would question, I don't know if they're going to love all of those 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. So there's always nuance with this, and we know it's a very difficult game. Young players especially, I mean, we see guys have great years, and then they become what Adley Rutschman's been over the last year.
Well, I don't know what Cowser and Westberg are going to be. I think Westberg might be the best player of all of them. Like I've said that. I'll continue to say that.
Okay.
But maybe he might be the one 10 years from now we look up, and his stat line looks more Markakis, more B.J. Surhoff over the course of a body of work. Where, but all the questions in play that we had last year when it kind of fell apart in the second half are back in play about the individual players. Where is Colton? Is he going to strike out less? Is he going to play defense? Is Gunnar Henderson going to be a shortstop or third baseman?
Right.
What's going to happen with Rutschman?
I mean,
Holiday's the one thing that, to me, I don't have any questions
he's
about him
trending
today.
up. I mean, there's a question of how good he's going to become. Will he be?
But he's here to stay. He's not going back down to Norfolk. He's not Kobe Mayo. He's not Heston Kjerstad.
I mean, Westberg's not going to Westberg, Gunnar, Adley. I mean, they're not going back to Norfolk in the way that Heston Kjerstad was demoted this week.
But I hope they don't hit a speed bump, start hitting 215 the way Adley did.
Sure, no question. I mean, that's why I've kind of said, look, it's all tied together because these guys struggling are some of the biggest reasons why they're struggling. Obviously, the pitching side, but we've talked about it. Their hitting's been nearly as disappointing as the pitching. I've said, whether you're talking about Mike Elias, whether you're talking about Tony Mansolino and the rest of the coaching staff, front office, baseball ops, everyone that has a hand in this mess that 2025 has been, the biggest objective the rest of the year for me is not how many more games you can win. It's getting that group of young core players trending in the right direction again. I mean, the arrow's up on Jackson Holliday. The rest of these guys, Gunner's had a good year.
Well, it could
overall.
only be down when the expectation is 30 home runs and 120 RBIs.
And look, I mean,
now Mike Schmidt can do that every
right,
year.
right.
Cal Ripken did do that.
And that's where I want to be fair in how I'm talking about Gunnar Henderson. I mean, Gunnar Henderson's still playing at a well above average level overall.
24?
He's getting ready to turn 24. He'll be 24 soon.
I am right. 23, 24.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
So like he's fine in a big picture sense, although you certainly want to see him getting straightened out.
Well, when he's
left-handed
26
pitching.
or 27, the way Rutschman is, and if he's still hitting 259 and marginal power, can't hit against lefties.
Yeah, I mean, he's got good power. The question is lefties, and what's frustrating about it is the last couple years he showed much more of an ability to hit lefties. It doesn't mean he's going to be as good against lefties as he is against righties. Most left-handed hitters aren't going to fit that description, but you don't want it to be so extreme where you're talking about the P word, platoon, right? They're obviously not going to do that with Gunnar. I mean, they still had him batting third against Skubal. You could question whether that was smart. You could question whether he was the guy or Jackson Holliday should have been the one dropped in the order. And Holliday, they dropped down to sixth. I'm not going to sit here and split hairs about the batting order that
in
much.
A game they weren't going to win either way.
Right, exactly. I mean, Dylan Carlson's the guy who got a couple hits off of it.
This is
Go
one
figure.
of the problems, dude. By the way, Luke Jones is here. Word Fadley. This is all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. I have the Back to the Future scratch-offs I'm going to be giving away here momentarily. I think that's one of the issues with the whole thing is we talk about it in totality and saying what's trending up, what's trending down. I'm trying to find things to talk about here that could be we could be enthusiastic about.
Well, I think
I mean, I
don't
know what
Westberg's
that is.
healthy and back.
Okay.
That Colton Cowser's healthy and back in the lineup, although he crashed into the wall really hard on Thursday night. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that over the course of the weekend. But I think that's a big part of it. And that's why, the news Thursday that Tyler O'Neill's shoulder is bothering him again. I mean, they thought he was going to be back next week. He's got a 3-year deal. He's not opting out. I think that ship has certainly sailed. That ship probably sailed by Easter, the way that he
can
was
hate
going.
Baltimore, but he's staying. Yeah.
But he, in fairness, he also still has 2 years left on his deal. When he's been healthy in his career, it's not as though he hasn't been a productive major league player. I mean, that's why they signed him. Whether they were smart in doing that or not, I mean, certainly.
It's another indictment of Elias, right?
Sure.
One more.
Sure. Well, and what's interesting about it is guys like me, I'm going to lump myself in with this group. I've talked about him being risk-averse and at times maybe needing to take a few more chances. He took a chance on Tyler O'Neill, right? I mean, he gave him a 3-year deal knowing that his history was he's not a guy who's played more than 100 games in his career more than a couple times, right? So, he did it. Obviously, there was a need for them against left-handed pitching that has played out this year
To
even
be
more
real honest,
extreme.
whatever money they've pissed away on him, like this year, it doesn't matter because they're in last place with him or without him.
Right.
To your point, what's he going to be next year?
Right,
if
exactly.
we're paying him.
Exactly.
Right.
And he could still be productive over the next couple years. So that's where
At least he is a Major League Baseball player, right? When he plays.
When he's healthy,
Right.
yeah. I mean, he wasn't good earlier this year. I think the neck shoulder issue, I think that started bothering him not long after opening day. When you kind of look, his first week, he looked like he was
a good signing.
A right-handed Babe Ruth. I mean, that's what he looked like the first week. And since then, I think he went like 7 for 60 or like something really bad. But
and add a character for him if he's
healthy.
healthy.
I think Tyler O'Neill's a great example here of, for me, the difficulty in evaluating where they are right now with Mike Elias, his future, whether he's going to be the guy beyond this year, because you do look at the body of work. He did rebuild the organization. This was an organization that we knew, even when they were winning with Buck Showalter and Dan Duquette, they were still very much in the Stone Age as it pertained to analytics and player development,
Korean
and,
scouting,
farm system, the Dominican, all of that, and they've made hay in those areas. Now there's still work to be done. Clearly, they've hit. I don't want to even say hiccups. Hiccups would be, an understatement at this point because even their minor leagues have been underwhelming this year.
Stuck on the rocks.
But that said, I think you need to tread very carefully before you just say you're going to throw them out because to the point that we've talked about a lot, what capability, what chops does this ownership group have to hire a replacement if you decide that that's what you're going to do? And let me be clear, that's not to say that Mike Elias gets a pass for the next 5 years. I'm not saying that at all.
By the way, Cal Ripken sitting behind home plate with Harbaugh the other night, right?
He was. And I thought it was funny how they did not even try to catch the foul ball that landed right behind them. I thought that was funny. But I think this is where I've struggled with Elias because, you can go back and find conversations that we had 2 or 3 years ago of certain elements that I took issue with as far as how they were proceeding. But prior to this year, if you had told me whether I was pleased with the overall body of work of Mike Elias, of course I'd say yes.
Well, when Rubenstein took over the team 14 months ago, there'd be no thought that he'd be making a baseball decision this kind. He had a manager, had a general manager. They made it through the rain. They made it to 101 wins. They now have money bags. They got their $600 million. They're going to throw you out of the press box, what's left of us, at the left field. It's a whole different circumstance. Not just, I mentioned Cal Ripken just to be a little flippant because it is, people think he's going to be involved in this. If he wanted to be involved in it, I think he'd have been involved.
I think that would have happened 20 years ago if he really wanted to.
But I think there's also pressure, and I would tell John Maroon this. Hey, dude, you saddled up in this, and you're sitting behind home plate, and you look like Cal Ripken, and you know, people think that you're some baseball savant or some genius who's going to Johnny Bravo the next Mike Elias. Cal doesn't. That's not what Cal does. No. And to think of it in those terms, you're just being reverential to the sacred cow. You're not really speaking to what modern baseball is and what a 74-year-old billionaire owner is going to have to go through with no baseball expertise and no baseball people around him. And I'm sure people are stepping in him now. Do this, do that, fire. Just in the same way the world is. He's a neophyte owner. I haven't liked anything about what's happened under his ownership. Anything. Well, there's nothing to hang our hat on yet. I mean, I don't know. If it was going to be dramatic change, we would have seen it. There's been dramatic change. Dude, they're in last place.
Well,
that's dramatic change.
I don't think I will say in fairness to ownership, I don't think their being in last place has anything to do with ownership.
But it's a dramatic change in everything psychologically about how they're going to sell tickets, how they're going to sell every part of their business, including the streaming. Every part of that is now you're the next owner who stinks, who's in last place, who's fired a manager, is hanging around with Cal Ripken, and Cal may or may not want to be hanging around with you in a general sense to think that you know what you're doing. Cal has to say, oh, Rubenstein, he's the greatest. Everybody has to say that, except he hasn't done anything to make me say that.
Sure.
And putting a bobblehead of yourself together and ducking me and you got a seat and I don't, I'm not down with that. I'm not down with that. And I tell them that if you walked in here now. I just think this has really, really been poorly handled, dude, over the last 15 months. I mean, as we sit here going into the All-Star, we're doing the show here on a day when I plan to do these Fridays thinking downtown's going to be packed for more than the fireworks. They're actually going to come for the baseball. I mean, now you get an empty stadium all summer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just
other
much.
Other than the giveaway days,
The momentum has been not squandered. It's been not even just lost. It's been you've resurrected the bad vibes that Angelos gave for 30 years.
Yeah. I mean,
certainly for me.
And that's where it's tough for – and this was going to be tough for whoever the owner was going to be, right? I mean, there's 30, if not 40 years. I mean, you hear me say it all the time. I'm 41.
But you could fall on your face and be revered against Angelos, and this guy ate off of that last summer for a while.
It did.
Now he's not even eating off of that with the people who bought the tickets.
If things were going to go this south on the field in the way that they have, which no one predicted, even the most pessimistic this offseason we're not forecasting.
And I'm not blaming Rubenstein for that. I'm saying, what are you going to do about it?
I'm saying, exactly.
What is he equipped to do?
But that's the thing. I mean, you thought you would come in and say what you want about the business side, corporate sponsorships, the future with TV, all of that. I mean, all of those questions were there and are still there. But you thought the baseball side was going to deodorize a lot of that while you figured it out in the same way we were kind of sort of talking about that in as complimentary terms as John Angelos might have deserved over the last few years, which is not much. But, hey, they did hire Mike Elias. They got out of the way. They rebuilt the organization. They were successful doing that.
Well, go back to Angelos' press conference on Martin Luther King Day, which was right out of the Trump playbook. And for being a Democrat and a progressive and all that, so John A. was. But that's what ownership looked like 2 years ago. Now ownership looks like Bud Selig doing this. Like saying, I bought the team. I got a lot of money. But, I mean, the one thing you learn that he's going to learn as a billionaire, you're not buying this. You can go in and buy funeral homes. You can buy anything you want when you're a billionaire, but you can't buy wins in baseball.
Yeah.
And he knows that now.
Sure.
He's up on that.
Well, and I think, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that this weekend, a year ago, this weekend, the Phillies were in town. The ballparks were packed. And
it was crazy.
And I get it. There were a lot of Philadelphia fans. And
it's a Fleet Week, yeah.
But at the same time, the Orioles won 2 out of 3. The ballpark was rocking. They went to the Bronx right after that when we were sitting at Costas, and they had their high water mark. They were 24 games over 500. There were a lot of people who thought they were the best team in baseball a year ago at this time.
I thought they were the best team they've been in my lifetime.
It's like a switch.
In regard to where the future was. I spoke of their future a year ago as, well, even if they screw this up a little bit, they'll be a playoff team. Right?
And that's where, and believe me, you've heard me be critical. We've criticized them a lot. I still am at a loss for just how much has gone bad and how it's gone this bad. I still can't wrap my head around it entirely. Yeah, the pitching part of it.
Is there anything to compare it to? I remember the Mets had Pulsifer, Isringhausen, and whoever their other stud was. Then the next time around, they had Syndergaard. But they went to a World Series. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They did some things. I'm trying to think of a young kiddie core that one year looked like the 95 Indians, and 2 years later is just dog meat. I don't even like the Cubs kind of fell apart kind of quickly, but not really. They won a World Series.
But you think about it, and obviously their pace has improved a bit here over the last 2.5 weeks or so. But you still look at their pace. They're still on pace to be a 95 to 97 loss team. I can't remember what it is exactly as we're talking in real time, but to go from 101 and 61. To still being a 91-win team last year.
While all your young players are coming into age,
question.
Right?
And their guys are ascending and other guys are arriving and all that. For it to fall apart this way, that's why I've said, if you look at this in terms of the way that they would look at it, being analytics-minded, analysis, they've got predictive models that they're running simulations about, if player A does this, player B does this, what's that looking in terms of, you go down the list, what's our most likely outcome in terms of wins and losses and all of that. So if you laid all that out there, I would venture to guess that this was like a bottom 1 or 2% likelihood as far as the outcome of this many things going wrong, losing to the degree that they have. The idea, think about it. You and I back in March, did we ever at any point talk about Brandon Hyde being on the hot seat? I'm sure we addressed it from a standpoint of, if they didn't have the kind of year that they're expecting, could there be a change at the end of the year? Something if they got swept in the playoffs.
Yeah, what if
again?
they struggle and become a 500 team?
Think about it. He's been gone for 3 weeks now. I look at the entire thing, and it still really does baffle me in a lot of ways of why this many things have gone wrong, and it kind of makes me feel dumb, Nestor. Because I'm around the team. Not that I'm privy to so much of their proprietary behind-the-scenes work that they're doing in the way that all major league teams are. But
the discovery of what's wrong with Rutschman sits in the middle of it.
Sure, and we saw him look better on the road trip. The people have broke down the fact that he's eliminated the toe tap, but we'll see. I need to see more than a week or two of Adley Rutschman. Maybe looking like Adley Rutschman again.
Not looking like half of Adley Rutschman. I'm not looking at him looking like a 240 hitter.
I need to see him look like
a star.
Yeah. And he was never a 300 hitter, but he certainly was not a guy that was hovering around the Mendoza line the way that he has for the better part of a calendar year now. So that's where so much of this is it's just so messy. And
let's go talk about football then.
Yeah. I feel like we've had the same conversation.
Yeah, but on the back end of the Scooble thing, and losing another series, and also winning 10-1 one night, which makes everybody feel good for a minute and a half, and I feel good about it. I feel good about 6-game winning streaks, and then I look up and they're 13 games under 500 again.
And that right there is where it's so tough. Looking through the lens,
to think that they could even get to 500 is such an incredible.
Think about it. This team at this point in time, so going into this series, they're 27-40. That's not good. Captain Obvious, right? No duh.
Third worst team in America.
But think about it. If they played 10 games over 500, 15 games over 500 the rest of the way, just talking about that in isolation, you'd feel good about that, right?
If they finish the season at 500 after they deal whatever 3 or 4 key players are going to deal,
and look,
that's to me in August and September. Because it's not that far off, and we're 6 weeks out on that,
Sure.
right? They're not going to be a contender. All-Star game's going to happen,
Yeah, I mean,
and the trade's
we're
going to
a
happen.
month from the All-Star
August and
break.
September, if they can be a 500 team in those 2 months with a diminished team, that would feel decent.
If it's the young core guys leading the way.
That's what I mean.
Right, exactly. I mean,
When I say diminished team, I'm not expecting Zach Eflin to be making starts in September. I'm really not. I mean, you're going to take your number one out because you're going to get some value for dealing.
We'll see. Again, I still think the trade deadline has so much nuance to it, much more than where they were 3 or 4 years ago when they'd get to the trade deadline, and any veteran that was worth a nickel was going to be dealt.
Here's where everybody, and this is because Elias is the one doing this, and he's too conservative. To your point, right? Too Yaley conservative.
It's like with Tyler.
But
Tyler
if I said,
O'Neill.
what if they dealt Kalzer and?
Well, they're not going to do that.
See, this is where you're screwed up because
what are you going to get for
you
him?
put that and that to get a pitcher.
Okay.
You put that and this.
Okay.
You put guys that when I say their name, you're like, they're not going to do that. We're not going to deal that guy. He's untouchable. He's untouchable.
Okay.
Well, but if you're going to get
you're
another Eflin
okay.
kind of guy with a deal left, a year left, and whatever.
I need way better than Zach Eflin if I'm trading Colton Cowser.
Fair enough.
I mean, let's be real.
You're higher on him than I am.
He was second in the league in Rookie of the Year, man. I mean, he's got 4 years of club control left.
Rookie of the Year's fine and all that. I just don't think he's a great player. I think he's an okay.
So we're going to let perfect be the enemy of good? I mean,
well, just
he's
having
a good player.
I think he'll be an average Major League Baseball player.
I guess my question with that, but who are you dealing with that you're making that deal?
Why are you not dealing an average Major League Baseball player if someone else coveted him? I'm not even making the case for him. I'm just saying if you want to get creative on deals.
But who's trading for Colton Cowser is what I'm asking you.
Somebody that believes in him.
A contender or another seller. So is this the Orioles being a seller selling Colton Cowser?
To your point, it may be more of a blend of something else. That was my point.
I mean,
my point is if you're not dealing into the pennant race, you could get more creative in saying, I'm getting a number 2 starter for next year who has club control for a year or two. I have to give something up for that. I'm not giving Gunnar Henderson up. I'll draw a line, but I'm saying the line's further down when you're last place team.
And let me be clear, I'm not.
And you're talking about guys that are going to strike out 140 times a year.
I just don't think there's. I'd have to see what a deal looks like where you're trading Colton Cowser because I just don't think that deal's going to be out there.
Okay.
I mean, if
it's somebody else's
Kobe Mayo, Heston Kjerstad, like a couple other small, lower level prospects that they have, I don't know.
But guys that have failed, guys that have half made it or made it enough to
Colton
have made
Cowser
it.
hasn't failed.
I said no. If all you're going to deal are guys who have failed or who have. Are at a diminished value to begin with. Kobe Mayo is worth less today than he was a year ago.
He's still a top 20 prospect in baseball.
Okay, then deal him.
Keith Wall
just go get something for him.
Fair enough.
I don't think that's going to happen.
We're getting hung up with a specific example of Colton Cowser. Look, Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holliday are probably the only 2 guys I would not trade.
And I don't know if I trade Rutschman right now to give him away, right?
Well,
because who's going to give you one for him?
That's what I'm saying. And yes, I've made the comment that they could be buyers and sellers, but
I'm looking at that blended way that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like I'm not just going to have a sell-off.
I just think
I'm going to have a swap-off.
Yeah, I just think for me, it would be really interesting, like what would be, who's the team, who's the pitcher, why would they want Colton Cowser, who, as you said, is a flawed player, and I'm not saying that he doesn't have some warts, although I think he's still very good at what he does well. I'm not sure if a team wants that with a guy who's already 2 years into a major league career and you have less club control compared to some team giving you 2 top 50 prospects that
they need
are
pitching.
AAA.
That's my point. They need
Fair
pitching.
enough.
They need pitching.
Oh, no question. Well,
and then go sign another Tyler O'Neill if they want for an outfielder.
That's why I'm not as quick as you are to trade Zach Eflin. My thought is I might look to try to sign Zach Eflin to a 2-year extension. Because if you're trading him and Sagano, then let's say Bradish comes back in late August.
How old is Eflin? 31?
Eflin's, he's 30, 31, something like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not giving him a 5 or 6 year deal or anything
But if you
stupid,
gave him 2 years and $48 million, does he take that?
I mean, I think it all depends. Does he like it here? Is he?
I bet he doesn't like last place.
Sure, but is he of the thought that this year he still likes where they are in a big picture sense, and this year's just.
Well, he didn't choose to be here either.
Sure, I mean he was traded.
He didn't pick it,
but so I think the next. I mean, I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen. I'm not fascinated in like an enthusiastic way necessarily because the team stinks, but
as we break this segment down and end it and go to football, we're going to wind up talking a whole lot more about this than we are how the bats didn't awake against Jared Skubal or Tarek Skubal on the
Sure. I mean, again, you look at
Jared Lorenzen.
You look at these individual performances. Jordan Westbrook's hit a couple home runs. Great. It's good to see Colton Cowser back. It's good to see Gunnar Henderson starting to get some hits against left-handed pitching because that's been such a disaster.
I would say it's good to see Ryan Mountcastle out of the way, and now we're going to
find out about Kobe
find
Mayo.
else. Right,
yeah. And look, it might be ugly, or maybe he'll start to figure it out after a while. It's. I say this somewhat flippantly. It feels like things can't get much worse, right?
But they could. Okay.
Could they, though? You know what I mean? I mean, they're already
Trump's running military stuff around,
but
so
we'll
it
see.
could get worse this weekend.
There are a lot of ways to try to evaluate the rest of the season, but put aside the win-loss record, I want to see these young guys start to get back on track and really start that the arrow's pointing up.
One way to do that is play bad teams and beat them.
Hey, but you know what? I think a lot of it, and I'm pointing to my head right now, I think a lot of it's between the ears for this team, this organization at this point in time, because I still can't fully explain it all. I don't understand how. Go look at what they ranked against left-handed pitching last year and the year before compared to now, where they look like they've never seen lefties before. That's how bad they are against lefties.
I know how hard this has been for you to explain and to get the words out. In our next segment, I'm going to have you get the words out about how Lamar Jackson didn't show up for wind sprints for $750,000. He's Luke. I'm Nestor. We're down here at Fainley's. It's all brought to you by friends at the Maryland Lottery, Curio Wellness, Liberty Pure, and I have the scratch-offs from the Back to the Future, which I'm going to give away. Luke is here. He's headed to the ballpark. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking. Baltimore, positive from Fainley's.